Hello, and welcome to Envision, the show where we talk to successful entrepreneurs to find out what drives them, lessons they've learned in their business career, and thoughts on the Cape Fear region. I'm your host, Jonathan Rowe, and with us today is founder and CEO, Ed Mondello of Glide Bikes. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you, and it's great to be surrounded by the bikes. So you've had a really fascinating career, and especially to how you got to here with Glide Bikes. Did you ever imagine, years ago when you were living up in Boston in the tech industry and involved in some tech startups, that you'd be here as an entrepreneur in Wilmington selling bikes?
No, this was, something pretty far-fetched in the way I was going up there with what, the technology field I was in, and setting up networks and doing IT and being on the cutting edge of that, and the technology belt, where you're surrounded by that. So this is kind of like old school. Going back to hands-on mechanical stuff. And I mean, I always had a passion for biking, but I never thought I could make it a business.
And you're an engineer by sort of background, if you will.
Yeah, I went to Wentworth of Institute Technology up in Boston and had a background in robotics. Worked for several robotics companies in the 80s and early 90s, and got into the electronics part of it and then into computers. So, roundabout way, yeah. And I was a mechanic before that in high school, so I always had my hands on things,
And because sort of, if I remember the timeline right, Glide Bikes came about after you came to Wilmington. So what sort of precipitated the move from Boston down to Wilmington? Because I think a lot of our viewers probably relate to that decision to move down here from other parts of the country.
Well, we did a lot of research, my wife and I. She's an attorney, and also having the IT business, I needed a place that we could move to that could support both being an attorney and both being in the IT business. And we researched a lot of the eastern seaboard communities all the way down to Florida up toward this way. We wanted a warmer climate, one that would promote business growth, that had a city, that had an airport. And we kept coming back to Wilmington, and we visited the area from 2000 on. Of course, this wasn't even in the plan at that point. It was just, let's relocate to a warmer climate. And it took 4 or 5 years. We actually moved here in 2005. We made the decision in 2004. And in the process of that is when I kind of got on this track of just making this in my basement in Boston, just for my own personal kids, so they could learn how to ride a bike. And it just started kind of building on its own. And I thought, well, gee, I could open a factory in Wilmington pretty easy compared to in Boston. The rent's a lot easier. You can find a readily supply of people that want work, whereas Boston was hard to find workers, relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
The cost labor is much higher there, and the rent's much higher, and business licensing and that type of stuff is more difficult. So
let's talk a little bit again, because I think a lot of people who follow the show are probably fascinated with the fact that you start out with a vision, and then here you are with the actual bikes, selling them now all over the world. Talk a little bit about how you figured out the opportunity, because you sort of mentioned, it started with your kids, and seeing them try to learn how to ride a bike, and you sort of being the engineer, tinkering type that comes up with a solution. Sort of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, what happened was my daughter was trying to learn how to ride a bike, and she was about 4 years old, and we went down to the store and picked out, typical Barbie bike, the pink, bike with the tassels and all that, and the training wheels, and she thought it was great, and we got on it at home. I put it together, and she started riding down the sidewalk and hit a crack and fell over and got trapped under the bike, and the thing weighed more than she did. I couldn't even, she couldn't get out from under it herself. So from that was the concept was born. I said, these bikes are way too heavy. These kids' bikes are 20, 25 pounds. My daughter weighed about 30 pounds, 35 pounds. So I said, how are they ever going to be able to master something? Imagine an adult riding an over 100-pound bicycle.
Right.
It wouldn't be fun. So I thought, well, they don't need to learn how to pedal first. They need to learn how to balance. That's really the hard part, and anything that we do is balance. So I said, let's eliminate the whole pedal concept and just go right to let's make it balance. And I was at the time racing downhill mountain bikes for a hobby. And the difference between a downhill mountain bike and a full-on cross-country mountain bike is this geometry. So I decided to experiment with different geometries, because that makes the balance point at a lower speed. If you have downhill mountain bike geometry, your bike can balance at a very, very low speed going through really technical rocky terrain. So I took that concept and applied it to some PVC tubing and made my first bike out of PVC, and gave it to the kids, and they balanced on it pretty quick, and it was pretty instant. And we knew, well, we had something there. And the neighbors would come out and say, "Is that kid?" My son was only not even 2. "Is he riding a two-wheel bike? How is he balancing like that? Is there a gyro in there or something? Is that a motor?" And he's like, "No, it's just balancing by itself." So
wow.
they, we knew we were onto something at that point.
So is that sort of combination? So the first bike, or first bikes, if you would, for your kids were just PVC pipes and parts from bike stores and Home Depot or Lowe's, and just put together?
Yeah, basically we went down to Lowe's or Home Depot and picked out the different junctions of plumbing to make the front end and the fork, and I took a router and routed out the tubing and drilled some holes and hole saws and kind of figured it out how to make it a bike. And it was just a real basic one tube design with a slot for a back wheel and then another one for the front, and went in at a 90-degree angle with some fittings, and took a pair of mountain bike handlebars and just stuffed it through the hole, put some grips on it, and called it a day.
And so now, your kids are out riding them, and as you mentioned, you're getting a lot of interest from neighbors and people who see them asking you, "What is this?" and just being amazed. What sort of then happened next in this sort of evolution?
Well, in conjunction with that, we were trying to move down here.
Right.
So we said, what can we do down there? Is it going to be feasible to start a company? Is it going to be feasible to start another IT company? My wife's an attorney. She was able to get her license to work in this state, so that was one good part of it. She was able to go to work down here. And I did come down initially and start the IT business, but I realized pretty quickly that this is where I had to focus. So we did the IT for enough to pay the bills and keep things going and let me further develop this. And we went to some trade shows out in Vegas. We went to the bicycle trade show, which is called Interbike, and that's where all of the manufacturers meet every year.
And when you went out there, you're still out there with your PVC bike?
I was out there with the PVC bike. We painted them all bright colors. We had some purple and some pink ones and some yellow ones. We made this elaborate booth out of PVC tubing, and we had like a Christmas tree of bikes going up the sides. And it was funny. We got a lot of odd looks. People would say, "What the heck is that? A pipe made out of toilet tubing? Who do you think? How are you going to sell that? No one's going to buy those things. Why would you buy a bike without pedals?" So the whole concept was just so foreign to the bicycle world. First of all, being made out of PVC, and second of all, not having pedals. It just was like foreign to their whole thought process. They just didn't think it would work. But fortunately, Discovery Channel was there, and in a second, it was the quickest sales visit I've ever had. The guy basically threw me his card and said, "This looks cool, call me after the show." And I called him and he said, "We want to put these on our website. We think they're going to do great for Christmas. How many can you make per month?" And he overwhelmed us with orders. And Discovery.com was the first actual retail outlet that took them.
And how were you making them? So you're still making these?
We had a little factory over on 16th Street, a little Kwanzaa building. And I was in there with myself and a friend of mine, Errol Kaglarkin, and we were just kind of, trying to figure out how to make an assembly line. And we got some jigs made at some machinists locally here. They made us the jig so that we could put the pipe into a jig and have all the holes lined up, so we didn't have to do everything by hand. And we actually created stations. We had a little, assembly line. And I went on Craigslist and I started hiring people, and we just had a little assembly line going. We were working, 2 shifts a day during the Christmas season trying to put out the bikes. It was so hard it took about 3.5 hours of labor to make one bike.
Wow.
And at full capacity in the shop, we could only produce about 30 bikes a day. And we were selling about 45, so it was hard to keep up.
Well, let me pause you there, because I think one of the things, so what about you individually as you're going through this process? Was there ever, when you're out in the trade show, obviously there was the great lead with Discovery Channel and launch point there, but with any of the people coming by and saying, what is this? This isn't going to work. Did you ever think to yourself,
skeptics,
is this going to work? Or were you always a believer?
Well, I knew that that the purpose of it, the whole purpose of it, and again, when you see a kid get on this and ride it, and for the first time learn that balance and have that eureka moment, and they smile and they're happy and their parents are just amazed that they can do this, that's what drives you. At that point I said, well, I've done some pretty nice, technical systems. You being in MIS, you can understand that. I've built some pretty elaborate computer systems for some clients in downtown Boston that have taken, 3 years, 2 years of planning, and at the end, and you turn it on and it all works, and they go, great, that's what it was supposed to do, Right. But when you see a little kid get on this and just start, having a eureka moment, and the parents are so happy, the kids are happy, there's just something there that's more rewarding than that, building a network. I mean, it was just something I had to be part of. And I said, no matter what in life I do, I always have to be around this now, because this drives the motivation. This is what, makes you want to get up in the morning and do something. When you see a new kid, there's a new kid every day. There's over 2 million kids born every day in the United States, and that's just here, all around the world. There's so many potential customers for this, and every kid's going to need to learn how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
And I've got a shortcut. And every parent that gets frustrated with training wheels and watching the kids fall over and scrape their knees up, they don't have to go through that now. There's a whole new way to do this. We've shifted the paradigm to this new kind of technology where the kids get on it, they go do it themselves. The parents don't even have to get involved. So to me, that I knew that piece of it, the money part of it and the business part of it and getting people to buy in on it, that was the hard part. The vision was always, yeah, it works. I mean, I know the concept of it works, changing it to metal, going overseas, getting it made, manufactured. Those are all kind of followed,
Well, let's talk about those, because where we sort of left off is you're getting orders for 45 a day, probably barely keeping up with the 30, and probably getting very little sleep at night.
Right.
Where does it go? And then all of a sudden you have all this pressure of, the name of it, the pricing, the shipping, the logistics. I'm sure having a wife as an attorney is a nice partnership to have.
Yeah, for sure.
What was sort of the next step in the evolution as this company is just sort of taking off?
Well, we knew we couldn't make them by hand, and we knew that there was no way that we could manufacture in the United States. I went to all the trade shows and all the bicycle trade shows. I went to the one in Canada. I tried to get the Canadian companies to make it up there, and they were saying, well, we're not making them up here anymore. We can't afford to make anything less than a $2,000 bike in Canada. The United States, it was more like a $3,000 bike. Trek's down to making their very high-end $6,000 bikes in the United States. Cannondale was already in the second go-around with, going out of business twice now. And they were the last company that actually made bikes in Connecticut. So we knew we couldn't do it here. It was too cheap of a product. I mean, it had to be that $99 price point.
Right.
And so we were like, well, how can we do this? So let's do what everyone else does and just go to Asia. And the problem was it was hard to find a partner over there that could actually do what they say they could. When you go to the trade shows, they always have their trade organizations there for Taiwan or for China or for India. And they all come over and they see your product and they go, we can make it, $5, $5. And you start the process with half a dozen of them. By the end of a year, you're down to 1 or 2 that can actually do something. And it's not $5 because nothing's $5
right.
By the time it gets here. So, and the quality of it had this, that was very important to us. It wasn't about the price, more about it had to, meet our requirements as far as, people were used to getting a certain product from us. Being handmade, we could pay attention to detail. Each one had a certain, quality that we just wanted to make sure that we were able to get that, out of the production models in Asia. So, that was a tough find. It took 2 years to go into production.
Wow. And do you sort of from maybe more of a generic sense, I mean, for a lot of people probably, look at you as a role model to taking an idea literally to fruition. What advice do you have for people who are, have a physical product and are thinking of manufacturing overseas or outsourcing manufacturing, especially to Asia?
Well, there's so much research you can do on the internet now that you couldn't do when we first, started thinking about this that is now available. I mean, a lot of the Asian companies sell directly on eBay. So if you can find a company that's already selling something similar, it's at least in the same class, a bicycle company if it's a bike, or jewelry if it's jewelry, whatever that happens to be, a toy company, plastic molding company. You want to start there and just see, if you can find a fit that will work for you, because the one problem is, they will sell it out the back door. They don't like to sign agreements that have any merit. and you know, you have to have a certain amount of trust with them. So that part of it is difficult to just do over the internet. So you know, we're going over to China for our first visit to see the factories and to see them. Now we've been dealing with China for 3.5, 4 years manufacturing. So you know, it took a while to get to the point where we're going to go over there. But now we have a diverse enough product that we're going to have to. So
wow.
My advice is, you know, stick with it. Use the you know, internet, and do as much as research as you can. Try to attend trade shows where there are other products like that being shown and made. Find out who's making other products for other people that are successful, and talk to other people that are doing it. Necessarily, they won't always talk to you if they're competing directly, but if it's an indirect competition, you know, they're usually happy to share their experience, I've found. Especially at the trade shows.
So so now as a company, especially you start with the Discovery Channel, then you what were the next sort of steps? Because then it was what, Toys R Us, Amazon, Costco. I mean, how did that sort of then follow?
Well, the next trade show we went to was the Toy Fair in New York City, and that's in February. And so that was right after Christmas, and we had just gotten in our first production models. And we had that there, and we were the only company selling a balance bike at that point. And we had appointments set up with Amazon and Costco. When you get listed to go to the trade shows, they list you on their website, and they send out that list to all the potential retailers. So they find out who's going, and there may be interest, and they set up appointments with you. So by doing those things, and you know, they're expensive things to do. These trade shows are anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 by the time and that's on low budget. I mean, once you get into a real situation, you can spend a lot more than that. But just to show up and be there, you know, expect to spend that much. But they're, you know, they can be worth it because you can make those connections. And there's nothing like seeing somebody face to face and them touching and feeling your product and you being able to explain it to them. So that launched us from that point. We were able to pick up Costco and Amazon. And these things are not, you're never going to get rich quick. There's no overnight success. If you talk to anybody that really does it, it takes a lot longer than you think. Yeah. Just the paperwork, when they said yes, took a year to get into Toys R Us.
Wow.
Just the paperwork. Costco was 6 months. Amazon was 9 months. They just boggle you with amounts of paperwork that, you know, even having a wife or an attorney, it was hard to get through it. Yeah. And that's if they say yes. And a lot of times they say maybe, and you keep going back and forth with samples, and you might see them again at another trade show, and then they say, well, okay, and then it's another year goes by. So, you know, I call them the long leads. You know, the short leads are, yeah, you can sell one tomorrow on a website. You know, and we get a lot of those at some of those shows. There's a lot of little mom and pop websites that specialize in kids products or whatever, and you can usually pick them up pretty quick. But you know, the big retailers, there's a process. For instance, we're trying to get in the Costco again in the store, inside the store, and we have to submit product in May for next spring. Wow. So even if we get in, we won't actually sell them anything until first quarter of next year. Yeah. And that's just the retail world. That's the way it works.
And how are you balancing everything? Because I mean, you've got a lot of publicity that's surrounding this. You're going to the trade shows. You know, every time a shipment comes over, you've got to check the quality, right? You've got, you know, what am I missing here? The website, brand name. I mean, people you're working with. You've got how are you balancing all this throughout this process?
It's been a tough struggle. I finally just gave up my IT business this year for 2011. I just couldn't do any more IT work because to be involved in that and be able to really do it right, I couldn't. And to devote all my time to this is where I need to be. So, and it's, you know, you're dealing with Asia, so your clock is completely flipped. Their workday starts about 9:00 p.m. here. Yeah. So most of my correspondence and meetings are at night from 9 to anywhere to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. A lot of times we'll get up in the morning at 5, 6, and there'll be decisions that have to be made or production stops. Wow. So, you know, it's constant back and forth. And then the business side of it starts, you know, so then I'm up dealing with our actual U.S. retail customers in base, you know, here. So it's around the clock. You never stop. Yeah. You never stop. Customer service, you know, between that and shipping and logistics and the warehouse and, you know, we just got our patent, so we've been dealing with the lawyers. And that was a big step for us to get that patent. Yeah. We got awarded a utility patent, which is very, very difficult to get in the bicycle world because when we went to our patent attorney down in Southport, Mike Monty, he said to me, I can get you a patent to start selling bikes, a patent pending.
Right.
And he says, you can get out there and test it in the marketplace and have a little bit of protection, but I can't guarantee you're going to get a patent. He says, that's very difficult with the bicycle division because they actually have their own building. And their attitude is, we've seen everything since the 1800s that's been done with two wheels, and you haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
So that's how you start out with them.
And now you're international. You've got so UK, New Zealand. What?
Yeah, we having the website 20 years ago, you couldn't do this, because you didn't have the internet and you didn't have everybody in the world see your web page.
And you've got a lot of YouTube videos as well on the site.
Yeah, we utilize that, and we're working with the Small Business Division. They helped us set up a Facebook page for the company, and there's just so many ways now for people to find out about you that they couldn't before. It was pretty much you had your retailers and that was it.
Yeah.
So the internet opened us up internationally, and a lot of those people come to the trade shows from all over the world. So with the combination of the two, we've been able to secure UK distribution and New Zealand. So, and we're working on, actually we have Canada as well. So they were able to, we went through the Christmas season with them. So it's been really good to be able to have those different outlets. It's a whole different business model now though, because now you're dealing with selling a product that you never touch in China. So it's a completely different thing that I'm used to doing, because usually you go right from our warehouse here in Wilmington and ship it. So you're dealing with a whole different set of rules that we had to learn. So
no, so and it's probably difficult, but looking forward, where do you see things going?
Well, I see that there's 50 million kids in the United States, and I see that every one of them needs to learn how to ride a bike, and there's 2 million born, and then that's just here, and then you get the rest of the world. So I don't think there's any limits to where we can go with this. I think right now our only limits are financial. We can't make enough bikes quick enough to have the next big customer come online.
Right.
It's always a limitation. When we get these offers from some of these retailers and they say, well, can you supply 1,000 bikes? And I say, not today. I need to find the money and figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
That's not, I don't have them in my back pocket. So I see that as being our biggest limitation, is just, if the federal government wanted to help out smaller businesses, that would be my suggestion. Let it make it easy for us to be able to expand like that when we have an order from a big retailer, to be able to fill it, because it's not so easy to do. They say it is, but it's not. We're going through the process right now, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's putting it very kindly. And you've also sort of diversified into adult bikes, right? Behind us here, you've got a very
this is a
design.
3-year project that's finally come to fruition. I'm actually going over to China to watch the production of this. This is called our Super Glider, and basically we've took the whole balance bike.
Yeah, so you've got the glider down there.
So what this does is it can rotate to right into a actual balance bike by just flipping that lever, and these pedals fold in, so that you can balance, use it as a push bike, a balance bike, and get people to start out on it that way, and they learn the balance, and then once they get comfortable, you can flip that lever out of the way and just open up your pedals and go ride.
And does it also fold up?
It does.
So
we wanted to make it fold up because we had a lot of adults that don't know how to ride a bike, and they're not comfortable with going out and getting a bicycle rack.
It's also quite light.
Yeah. And they wanted something that they could easily move around. By going to the trade shows, we've listened to a lot of different people and what their needs and wants are, and having suggestions come through our website. And this is something that we felt that it was important to make it fold up, collapsible, portable, lightweight, and small enough that you could stick it in your trunk, stick it in your closet, bring it through a big city's transportation system without having to pay any extra fees. You can go through the T with it, or the train, or the subway. It's real easy to maneuver once it's folded up. You can actually hold it by the lever and roll it on the back wheel. And so it just took a long time to be able to make this whole thing happen, and we're going to actually have them in the country in May. So we're pretty excited about this.
Well, let me ask you, because we're starting to unfortunately run out of time, but I think this is a story that's, whether it's a year from now or maybe even 6 months, where we get an update on the amazing progress you've made. What is, again, going back to where we started, how is Wilmington as a climate to start a business and grow it and be able to bring, have bikes shipped here and then sell them out of here, through the ports and logistics, and now going international? What are the positives maybe and negatives of?
I think it's been great because everybody's willing to help. That's what I find here. It's a very friendly climate for business. Through UNCW, we've met contacts for our website. We got Taylor and Gray did our website. We've had a lot of real good, positive experiences with people. Fred Myers from made our shirts for us for Queensboro.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many people here that you don't have to go very far to find what you need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of businesses. There's a lot of people with good advice. There's associations that There's a trade association that we go to. The World Trade Association. There's the UNCW program, the SPC program.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good people to get information from if you just want to put yourself out there and network.
Yeah.
And I find that most people are very willing to give good advice. We found, who to ship. I had no idea, how to get a bike into the country.
Yeah.
And another person that was making bikes told me about UTI, which is right over at the port, and they can bring everything in for us. So I went over and I met with them, and they said, "Don't worry about it. We'll handle it. Where's your factory? Give us the information."
Wow.
I put that together, and that was out of my hands. It was a worry I didn't need.
Yeah.
And they brought them in. They went through customs for us. They said, "Do you have a warehouse?" I said, "I don't." They said, "Well, you could use these couple. These ones are ones we recommend," and they recommended, East Carolina bonded warehouse. So we said, "Okay, great." Went over and met with them. They were real nice about flexibility, how to set it up. They said, "Well, how do you want to do it?" And they had some suggestions, and they just kind of walked us through everything, and it was very easy to do business here. Anytime I need to find people to do things, I can put an ad on Craigslist or come through, different networking through UNCW and find people to help me, do anything. So
yeah.
There's a good talent pool here. Rent is reasonably cheap. If you need a place to do it, and you can get your services done. There's good people to do IT and web and all that. So I think it's a pretty good place if you're looking to start up a company.
Yeah.
From that perspective. I mean, would I like to see more tax incentives? Yeah, that would be great. I mean, if they treated us like the movie industry, it would be nice. If there was more federal programs that we could tap into, if it was easy to learn how to do that. We're going through.
You're talking about getting access to capital.
Yeah, or just how to do things. If there's things available for us and how to get it. I mean, it's hard enough to keep. You get so much to do when you're doing your business. To try to learn how to get a grant, if there's one available, or if there was a way to get workers, or if those things were easy to get, we'd probably utilize them more. It's just difficult. That part of it, though, is probably the only thing I would say is hard, and that's going to be hard no matter where you go. So.
Yeah. Well, what you've done with Glide Bikes is an incredible story, and I know, for myself as part of the Entrepreneurship Center, seeing you sort of throughout this evolution is really just been an inspiration. You've come a long way, and I think you have a lot of continued success. And the fact that you've, just really created a great story of how to leverage the community to help, create these great bikes. And it's been really a pleasure having you today on the show, Ed. And thank you for joining us for Envision today, and hope to see you on your Glide Bikes real soon.